Doing good. Recording okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So, cars, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, by the way, you have a really good score. It's
Yeah, I'm actually about my score. I'm really satisfied with my score. Because with my background, I'm non-traditional. I did not do any science. Well, I did geography. Well, my degree is in science, but it's more like non-sciencey, I guess.
well, I
So
mean,
I
yeah.
had to
Wait, sorry. Go on.
so basically I had to take everything like as electives outside of my major. So I wasn't like a yeah. And then I'm currently doing my master's degree too. So
What are you doing your master's in?
I'm in environmental and occupational hygiene.
Yeah.
So it's like a little bit of air pollution research, and also I do like research in the occupational field, like construction work and like things like
And
that.
what the effects of environmental
Yeah,
effects on them.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah. So
Um,
I
yeah,
during school, I'm actually really satisfied with the score, and I think it's not bad for the
it's really
school that
good.
I want to apply to.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to get 100 on this,
Uh-huh.
um, but it's just um the cars part is just way beyond like
Yeah, it's a lot trickier than any other critical reading section for any other exam because I've like done all the other ones, and this one is definitely the trickiest.
yeah.
But at a certain point, it'll click.
Yeah, I mean, I've just tried a lot of different methods of doing cars. Like
Yeah,
even even though I'm Canadian, like I've taken the SAT before too. And like
yeah,
the
yeah,
reading,
yeah.
it's always been like my biggest issue ever. Like I just
Oh, okay.
never
Yeah.
understood like I mean, so I've tried like different methods. So like there's
Hmm.
ones that where I will look at the question first and then read the passage, and like
Yeah.
I've just tried all of it. And it
Okay.
just doesn't, so I
Okay.
don't know.
So normally I use OneNote. Um, so I can make like a shared OneNote um notebook for us to both use.
Okay, sounds good.
Familiar with that?
Yeah, I use it too.
Okay, okay. Yes. Okay, so we can use that. And okay, I see some of the passages that you have sent me.
Hmm.
All right. So overall, uh, what I guess the trick is, if there is one, is to be able to like decipher what matters,
Yeah.
like cutting the wheat from the chaff. Like most of it is just fluff, but you're
Hmm.
gonna look for the sentences um, that indicate that tell you something, that give you some kind of idea as to like what the author's perspective is.
Yeah.
So all right, so let's start with this one that's about formalism.
Hmm.
Okay, I have it in front of me. Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. um so I'll go like, I like to kind of like spend more time on fewer things
Hmm.
than just doing a lot of things and spending less time on it, because the idea behind that is that if you truly understand why the answer is the answer and why every other choice is not, then you'll see everything, like your score pretty much rise exponentially.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start slow with this one.
Okay.
uh okay. In the first place, to make a poem or the novel the central concern of literary criticism, has appeared to mean cutting it loose from its author and from the author's particular hopes, fears, interests, conflicts, etc. Criticism so limited may seem bloodless and hollow. Tell me about that.
So that just is an introduction to what literary criticism is, and basically it's saying that it means to detach it from what the author is like, author's intention is behind it.
Good, good, good. And if you do that, what's left?
What do you mean?
So like if you write a poem or an essay and you completely divorce it from the author, all that's left are the words, right?
Right.
So the form, the structure, right? Okay, so, okay, then in the second place, to emphasize a work seems to involve severing it from those who actually read it, and this severance may seem drastic and therefore disastrous. After all, literature is written to be read. So this is just saying, so in the first place, like literary criticism means that we divorce it from the author's intentions. In the second place, which is going to be, in contrast to that, is that if we do that thing in the first place, like cutting it away from the author's intentions and you know, like the person who wrote it, um, it could be a bad thing because literature is meant to be read.
Yeah.
Anyway, usually those first two paragraphs aren't going to be very useful to us, but they just kind of set the stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you why it's not going to be useful for us, because it doesn't really tell us much about what the author's perspective is.
Like
They're
the
kind
author
of,
wrote this piece.
yeah,
Okay.
yes. So, yeah, I guess I should clarify that. Since we're talking about literary criticism, which involves literature, which is written by authors, but we're talking about the author of the particular passage.
Okay.
Okay, so those first two sentences, I mean, the first two passages, and it's good to read in terms of, I'm sorry, paragraphs. It's good in terms to read in terms of paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
So, like kind of like how when you first learn how to read, you learn the sound a letter makes. And then when you try to read a word, you sound it out by going by the letters. And then after that, you go and you chunk it into sentences. I want us to be at a point where we can chunk it into paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're going to go like, think of like any passage like this in terms of paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
And be aware of like where certain things are, which will, it'll take time, but we'll get there. All right. So now we're talking about certain things. So the formalist critic. So I would just like highlight formalist over there. And like when you highlight, like I like to like double click on the word, and I have like my like hands on the Alt H button.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like doing that?
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah, it just, for speed, right? Okay, so the formalist critic, so right away, so we're talking about literary criticism. That's what the first two paragraphs say, which isn't saying much. But for the first time, we're talking about a specific type of literary criticism, one that is called formalist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're saying that the formalist critic knows as well as anyone that poems and plays and novels are written as expressions of particular personalities and are written from all sorts of motives, for money, from desire to express oneself, for the sake of a cause, etc. we don't need any of that stuff. Mostly because it says etc.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really need to know those specifics. The words to highlight and pay attention to are kind of like contrast words or just things like, so okay, then it says moreover, right, which just means in addition to. So it's just going to say like another thing that's in line with that same, reasoning of what the formalist critic knows. So, moreover, the formalist critic knows as well as anyone that literary works are merely potential until they are read. That is, they are recreated in the minds of actual readers who vary enormously in their capabilities. In their capabilities, their interests, their prejudices, I guess, their ideas, etc. Right? It doesn't say etc., but I'm saying etc. Because it's still stuff that we're not really that interested in. The words I want you to look for are the contrast words. So see that but?
Yeah.
So I would highlight that. So it says,
Interesting.
but the formalist critic is concerned primarily with the work itself. So I would actually, so it's good that you highlighted that. That's what I would highlight. I would highlight the but part and always look for those words. Look for but, however, because they indicate a contrast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very important sentence right there. Formalist critic is concerned with the work itself. So everything that came before is saying, while it's true that the formalist critic takes into consideration, the author's intentions and blah, 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 the formalist critic is concerned primarily, right? That means like mostly like with the work itself.
Right.
So let me ask you this. In terms of the first two paragraphs, which is a formalist critic more like?
Cutting it loose from the author.
Good. Perfect. So now we know what a formalist critic is, right? Okay. So then they say and by the way, if you ever see a word you don't know, just ask me.
Okay.
Okay. That's just a good thing to do in general if you ever see a word. Um like
And
yeah.
yeah, sometimes there's like words in the passage that I don't know, and they ask about it in the question.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh God, I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you can figure it out from the context. Because it matters um because it says speculation, right?
Hmm.
And what to you is speculation?
Speculation, just kind of guessing and
Yeah. Good. Okay. So yeah, because certain words have connotations, and authors use particular words for a reason, right? Like I've had so many like whatever students like ask me like, why don't they just say that? But they don't just like, if I say like speculation, it's like guessing. Sometimes students say like, why don't they just say guessing? But it's because of a particular, connotations. Like speculation, you would see like speculating like a stock price or things like that, because it's not particular. It's not exactly the same as guessing. But anyway, speculation on the mental processes that the author takes. No, that of the author takes the critic away from the work into biography and psychology. So So if we're concerned with just the work itself, we we will not go into the dimensions of the mental processes, because then that becomes less of this formalist literary criticism and more into something that's within the context of biography or psychology, right?
yeah.
Such studies describe the process of composition, but not the structure of the thing composed. So what does that sentence say to you?
That's saying to me that the studies that are more geography and psychology deals with the process of writing it, but not the structure, which is what the formula is.
Yeah. So the process of writing it, meaning like the mental like parts of why someone would write it.
Mhm.
Okay. Um okay. On the other hand, so that's another kind of contrast word that I would highlight.
Right. Oh wow, I
Um
like these words. Wow.
wait, yep, what's up?
No, I was just saying that I never thought of
Mhm.
highlight words. Like I know they're important, but I just
Oh yeah, yeah. Because it's telling you, it's almost like it's telling you something and it just keeps saying that same thing and you get the point, and then it tells you, but, and then it's different.
right.
So so everything that's before that but is the same. Everything, or rather the thing that's after, is different. So it's easier to, it's like if you have to memorize the alphabet, it's easier to smart way to do it is to memorize the or wait, if you wanted to memorize, oh, I would just say like it's easier to memorize the vowels because everything then, because there are fewer vowels and everything that's not a vowel is a consonant instead of memorizing it all. So if you memorize, so if you were to read this and you know the not part, the contrast stuff, you know that everything else is along the lines of what it's saying before. So anyway, on the other hand, exploration of the various readings which the work is received also takes the critic away from the work into psychology and the history of taste. So that's really, just saying that it's just another, pretty much it's another example of taking it away from the structure.
What does it mean by
Mhm.
various readings that the work receive?
Oh, so basically, like, if you are a literary critic and you're trying to um, examine or do some work on like critiquing some form of literature, um, you can read other people's critiques.
Okay.
Yeah, like
Okay.
various readings which the work has received. So like other people who have read it and what their takes are on it.
Okay.
So yeah, because that takes it away from the form and it goes into like again like psychology and the history of taste, which is just how other people have viewed it.
Mhm.
And then it says, but such work. So again, I would look at the word but. Um, such work, looking into the readings and stuff like that, valuable and necessary as it may be, is to be distinguished from the criticism of the work itself. So almost like if you want to think about it as like a movie and you want to be a very like a formalist critic for a movie, it, and you read other people's reviews, it takes away from your own criticism of the movie itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now it's going to actually define like some stuff for us. So this is good to know, and it's good that you highlighted the one and the two. Because yeah, you don't want to highlight too much. You just want to highlight what will help you go back and find the thing that you're looking for. So it's smart for you to highlight the one instead of everything else after it. So you can go back. So good job on that. So one, okay, so the formalist critic makes two assumptions. One, that the relevant part of the author's intention is what the author actually put into the work. That is, the critic assumes that the author's intention as realized is the intention that counts. That's pretty abstract. Um, What do you think that might?
So I think what that sentence means is that author's intention is whatever is written down. So
Yeah,
whatever's not has nothing to do. You can't assume. That's
perfect. Good. It's another word for that is like de facto. You know what I mean?
no.
Okay. Um, yeah. Like there's like de facto and de jure. Like de jure is like what like a law might state. Um, and then de facto is like what is actually like the fact. So okay. So but good. You understand that. Um, okay, and then and two, the formalist critic assumes an ideal reader. That is, instead of focusing on the varying spectrum of possible readings, aka interpretations, the critic attempts to find a central point of reference from which to focus on the structure of the poem or novel. So yeah, so it's worded in a way that makes it tough by saying ideal reader and things like that, but ultimately, well, yeah, what is it saying ultimately? I think you know.
uh, that yeah. So the formalist assumes the ideal reader.
Oh yeah, forget the ideal reader stuff, less important, but mostly, yeah, like mostly what is it trying to say?
I don't know. I just thought it was trying to say that the ideal reader is what
Mhm.
the critic assumes.
So what would the ideal reader be?
But well, it's very I don't know. It's hard to interpret,
Hmm.
but I think an ideal reader is somebody that understands the text and probably perfectly.
Understands the text as is, right? Instead of saying like my personal interpretation is this X, Y, and Z. It's saying like this is literally what it says, and therefore that's what it is.
Right.
Mhm. Okay. Um, so okay. Then it says, so the reason, the ideal reader part, it kind of like is meant to like kind of throw you off because then they say there is no ideal reader, of course, but for the purpose of focusing on the poem rather than on the critic's own reactions, it is a defensible strategy. Um, the alternatives are desperate. Either we say that one person's reading is as good as another's, or and thus deny the possibility of any standard reading, or else we take the lowest common denominator of the various readings that have been made. That is, we frankly move from literary criticism into social psychology. All right, that's kind of saying a lot. What do you take from that?
No, I'm kind of lost in the
Hmm.
words here.
But like, I want to hear what you think, even if you're lost or believe
Oh
that you're lost.
my gosh. Oh, so it's saying that it's trying to present like a way to deal with the idea of there's no ideal reader. So we can
Hmm.
either
Yep.
we can that everybody has the same reading capabilities or that we just go with the person that sucks at reading the most.
Yeah. There,
Read-
exactly. See. So yeah, trust yourself more often than not. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay.
And the problem with that is that it again, so you're kind of seeing a pattern here. Everything that they're saying, it's like if we do it this way, we're no longer doing literary criticism. We're doing this. Like before they said that it's like biology. Before they said it was like psychology. Before that they said it was um, social. Now they're saying it's social psychology, right?
Mhm.
But we want it to be just literary criticism.
Right.
So, um, so yeah, just if they like, as you read this, you want to get like a vibe of like the author. So the author is a very strict is very strict on what his or her thoughts are on what literary criticism is. Okay, to propose taking a consensus of the opinions of qualified readers. Okay, this just keeps going more into what it said before, right? It's kind of just saying more of the same thing, kind of. So, and it's there for a reason to throw you off and to make you be like, okay, now I have to understand this, but it's just saying the same stuff. And you can kind of tell because there's no contrast words.
Yeah.
It just goes more into why the thing that they said wouldn't work.
Yeah, I agree. Because sometimes if there's no transition word, then I'm not sure what kind of point they're trying to make.
Yeah, basically, it's the point. It's a point that's already been made, but elaborated on. So, it would only matter if they ask you about it.
Okay.
In which case it's easy. You could just go back to it. But just the fact that you understood it from the first part of that paragraph is enough.
Okay.
And okay, last paragraph. A literary work is a document, and as a document can be analyzed in terms of the forces that have produced it, or it may be manipulated as a force in its own right. Mirrors the past, it may influence the future. These facts, it would be futile to deny, and I know of no critic who does deny them. But, wait, what?
It's very convoluted.
Yeah, they're designed designed to be that way. But you see that but? That's the important part. So it says, but the reduction of a work of literature to its causes does not constitute literary criticism, nor does an estimate of its effects. So everything that came before is just saying, yeah, of course we can do this with a literary work, blah, 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 which they've said many times before in this passage, but that is not literary criticism. Literary criticism is a very specific thing, and that is what this author cares about.
Right. And what does the reduction of work mean?
Oh, just basically, if you take a literary work and you reduce it to its causes, aka the psychology or of the person who wrote it, or the social psychology of the situation around it. I mean, like, let me think of an example, like whatever. I don't know, something like Uncle Tom's Cabin. So Uncle Tom's Cabin has, like, there's causes that contributed to somebody writing Uncle Tom's Cabin, right? Like slavery, abolitionist movement, um, all those things. But if you reduce that work just to those, causes, that's not literary criticism.
Right.
Like if you wanted to do if you wanted to do literary criticism on Uncle Tom's Cabin, do you know what I mean by that book?
What do you mean?
Uncle Tom's Cabin?
It's a book?
Yeah.
Is it?
Do you know which book I'm talking about?
No, I've never read it.
Oh, okay, okay. I don't know. Just name the book.
1984.
Okay, okay. So 1984, right? If you wanted to reduce that to the causes would be post fascism, 40s, right? Society that it's basically it's a social commentary, right, on on a authoritative totalitarian government that was written as a reaction or a response to some things that actually happened in history, which is why George Orwell wrote it. Um, so that's an example of reducing it into the causes of why it was written.
Right. Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but if you want it to be a formalist literary critic, you would have to divorce it from those causes.
Right.
Um, yeah. So there's an example.
Okay.
Um, so okay, but the reduction of a work of literature to its oh yeah, I already said that. Good literature is more than effective rhetoric. You know what's meant by rhetoric?
It's just it's literary. It's like a literary thing.
Well, it's closer to like an argumentative thing. A rhetoric is like um, it's kind of like I shouldn't say formalized. Um, I don't know. Name like a political issue.
Social housing.
Social housing, right? So there's in a debate about social housing, which I guess is like we should pay for housing for people who can't afford it. Is that what that
Yeah.
is? Okay. So there's going to be a rhetoric, which is basically a argumentative strategy that could be for it or against it, right? So there could be rhetoric that says, it's a universal right. It's going to be better for society as a whole. There's going to be rhetoric against it that says, if we're a capitalist society, it's going to provide free housing for people who can't get a job, like don't work, late, all sorts of stuff.
Right.
So rhetoric, that's an important word. Um, you'll see it. Let me just Google the meaning so I can do
Yeah.
do a better job.
Yeah. I've written rhetorical
Mhm.
essays in college. I just don't remember
Oh
what it
yeah,
is.
and they're all based on like an argument, right?
Yeah, roughly. That's what
Mhm. Yeah. So okay, rhetoric is the art of effective or persuasive speaking or writing, especially the use of figures of speech and other compositional techniques. So basically, it's a way to persuade somebody. And when would you need to persuade somebody? Generally, in an argument or a debate, right? So if it's on some issue like social housing and you want to persuade them in one way or the other, you're going to use rhetoric.
Right.
Make
Okay.
sense?
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you wanted a little bit more, because it all comes from like the Greeks, uh, which you'll see a lot in passages whenever they refer to the classics or a classical education, they're referring to the Greeks.
Okay. Hold on. Let me write it down.
oh,
What specifically about?
just okay, so like rhetoric, initial like Aristotle basically mentions three different forms of rhetoric: logos, ethos, and pathos. I'll write them in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, like I think not having background in like this kind of stuff sometimes really sucks.
Um,
I don't know.
well, well, you're getting them. You're getting some now. But it's not like you need to be like you need to like study everything about it. Just these are the things that will. This is just some supplementary, I guess, information. because there's a lot of passages that talk about the classics. So I'll say that again: classics or classical education.
Right.
And
Class.
you see that in the chat, right? I'm writing in the chat.
You do.
Yeah, that refers to an education in the Greeks, i.e., Plato, Socrates, Aristotle.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes as soon as I see those names, I get headaches.
they're good things to read. But you don't have to, But let me ask you this: what do you think logos refers to?
Well,
Take
wait.
into all right before like 80% of English language is based on Greek and Latin roots.
Right.
So likely what it sounds like in English is what it is. So logos, what does that sound like?
A logo, like something that
Oh,
identifies.
think of I should say, so when I say roots, I mean like prefixes, suffixes. So like, okay, so think of it that way. So not like logo, but the LOG part.
A log.
Okay, yeah, keep going.
I have no idea. A record of something. I have no idea.
Keep
Like,
going. Keep
what's
going.
the context of this? Like logos, ethos, and pathos.
Well, the context is in this particularly, but it's also me making your brain flexible.
Okay.
Because you're not no one's going to go into the test knowing everything. So you know, once you see something that you don't know, um, it's like one of the most, it's like in the slides, I wrote like two most important things that I try to teach. And one of them is tolerance of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know, it's okay. That's where the learning begins. And the other thing is confidence in your own self-efficacy.
Yeah.
So basically, if you see something that you don't know, it's okay. And then you can figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So these things might seem like they're not like whatever relevant, but trust me, they will pay it forward. So think of other things. And
Uh,
also like consider, in Greek and stuff they would pronounce it differently, but just think about LOG.
oh, well, a log is a tree.
That,
could be a
oh,
could be
that's good. That's good.
could be a tree log, and then like I said, a log is also related to logarithms, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then so it's like related to math, and then log is
Math,
also
okay, good, which is based on
logic.
yes.
Okay.
So,
All right.
okay. So logos is logic. So that's one of the methods. That's one of the foundational um, rhetorical strategies. Appeal to people's logic if you want to convince them. So like using facts. What does ethos sound like?
Emotions, maybe.
Kind of, but think of like ETH. What you know?
Mm, yeah, just like people's uh well, F could mean
Mm-hmm. Could be what?
like two, like ethanol. Or it
Oh,
could uh
um,
I mean, I'm just trying to think of words that starts with
yeah, you're doing a good job actually.
um F.
Think of
I
it
don't
as something that you can appeal to when convincing someone.
uh, uh, F. ethical.
Exactly.
Okay, really
Ethics. Mhm.
ethical. Oh,
Yeah, ethics. Yeah.
that's convincing to people.
Oh no, no. These are just examples of rhetoric.
Okay.
So like you can one way of yeah, like you said social housing. So okay, we can use logos. We can say if we do social housing, our people will have more security and our economy will be enhanced because more people will have a place to live. Therefore, more people will enter the job force and our GDP would increase. So that's logos, right? Ethos as well by saying it's just a fundamental human right and it's
Mhm.
not okay that people are, homeless and stuff. Anyway, the
Right.
last one is pathos, which is emotions.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, now back to this.
Good to know.
um, yeah. So okay. Good literature is more than effective rhetoric applied to true ideas. Even if we could agree upon a philosophical yardstick for measuring the truth of ideas, and even if we could find some way that transcended nose counting for determining the effectiveness of the rhetoric. So overall, that's just saying what good literature is,
Hmm.
but ultimately the main point of all of this is what literary criticism is, and particularly what formalist literary criticism is. So for
Hmm.
this question, according to the passage, formalist criticism focuses primarily on which of the following aspects of a literary work. So we know, so another thing to focus on is, and this can help if you're running out of time and you haven't read it or whatever, what's different from the rest.
Right.
So its effect on the reader, right, is one of those things that's saying, like, we have to take into consideration the effect it has on the reader. After all, the reader literature is made for the person who reads it, right? Now
Hmm.
that's similar to the other thing that they said, which is the author's motivations, right?
Right.
And then all the way at the end, it says the truth of its ideas, right? But the only thing that's different, right, is its structure, because its structure is not concerned with how it has an effect on the person who reads it. It's not concerned with the person's motivation for writing it, and it's not concerned with how true it is. It's only focused on the writing itself.
Right. I mean, I did this a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, I think reading it now, I would actually think D might throw me off if.
Yes, because that's what they try to do at the end, right? By saying that, um, you know, uh, where it says the thing about truth or good literature is more than effective rhetoric applying to true ideas. Um, well, okay, wait. Why would it throw you off?
Um, because actually, wait, what? I'm just a little confused about what it means by the truth of its ideas. Does that
Oh yeah.
mean, wait, truth of its ideas? Actually, it's not really related,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Hmm.
the truth of the idea is, right, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And think about the things with rhetoric.
Right.
Like that's persuade. That's the art of persuasion. So if you have to use rhetoric, like to persuade someone, it's to get them to agree with a specific side, which isn't going to be true necessarily. It's just going to help you persuade them that to believe that it's true.
Right.
But
Yeah.
but the first thing that I see is just how everything is I just see that its structure is different from everything else. And when you look at your like your highlights, right?
Mhm.
Or like where you highlighted it, you're
Yeah.
basically seeing just how it's basically you're just looking at the work itself, right?
Mhm.
So that's nothing else, just
Yeah.
the work itself. Like in the third paragraph, the formalist critic is concerned primarily with the work itself.
Right. That's the key word.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
that defines what a formalist is.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where the answer is. But also think about it in terms of how it's different from everything else, all the other choices, right?
For sure.
Because they do talk about the effect on the reader, they do talk about the author's motivations, they do talk about the truth of its ideas,
Mm-hmm.
but they always say that those are the things that the formalist critic rejects.
Yeah. Makes sense.
All right, any questions there?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay,
No.
let's see what's after that. Oh, okay, it's the same one. Okay, implicit in the passage is the assumption that. Okay, so about like implicit and explicit and
Mhm.
stuff. Um, so if it's implicit, is it going to actually be there in the passage?
No.
No. Okay, good.
Is that
Mhm,
does that work every time? Because
mhm.
like sometimes like if I see something it's like implicit, then I would think um so that it's probably not explicitly said in the passage. But
Yeah.
then sometimes the answers will still be somewhat related, so I'm like confused.
Okay. Okay. So basically, like, if something is implicit, like if it's implied, um, there will be things that were explicitly stated that would make it so that thing that is implied is implied. Like if I said, or I could just use this as an example, but well, okay. I mean, if it's explicitly stated that the formalist critic is concerned primarily with the work itself, it's implied that the formalist critic is not concerned with like the author's motivations.
Right.
Even like even though it says explicitly that he's not concerned with whatever, like you can still find explicit examples, but those are the ones that let you answer something that's implied. It's kind of
Okay.
like an inference.
Right.
Okay, so this one is saying is the assumption that okay, I see some critical evaluations of literature are more valuable than others. Criticism that dismisses the author's motivation is ineffective. The ideal reader is one who has attempted to create a work of art. Okay. Good literature is nothing more than effective rhetoric applied to true ideas. Okay, so between A and B,
Mm.
um, some critical evaluations of literature are more valuable than others, versus criticism that dismisses the author's motivation as ineffective. So, all right, what do you
Like
think about that?
well, to me it seems like this question is not asking about the main idea of the passage. Like it's asking for something that's kind of like secondary to the main idea.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think everything kind of comes back to the main idea, but maybe like how most people say main idea is different from how I say it.
Okay.
So, I see the main idea as formalist critic is only concerned with the structure.
Yeah, I agree.
So, so, um, so okay, if criticism that dismisses the author's motivation is ineffective.
No, that's not related. I see why that's wrong, but I'm
Hmm?
kind of why A is right.
Okay, so this is another thing with cars, and I'll tell you why A is right, but also a lot of times the least wrong answer is the right one. And if
Right.
you can know for certain that B is wrong and C is wrong and D is wrong,
Right.
then A must be right,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Now, okay, so now why is A right? Like if you wanted to know, right?
I think it's mentioned. Is it mentioned somewhere?
Uh, well, there's an assumption, right? So I would look around there, kind of like where you highlighted the numbers.
Yeah.
So you see where it says for number 2,
Yeah.
assumes a ideal reader, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Uh, like the second number, number 2.
Hmm.
Wait, does it say something?
Yeah. So it says that the formalist critic assumes an ideal reader. That is, instead of focusing on the varying spectrum of possible readings, the critic attempts, blah 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 blah, right?
Mhm.
So like later on, it says there's no ideal reader, of course, blah blah blah, and the reasons why it's hard to actually find, what an ideal reader is, but clearly the formalist critic has like an ideal reader in mind that's not like in actuality, but the ideal reader in mind is the one that focuses on, the central point of reference that is that the structure of that literary work is based upon.
Hmm. Valuation. So critical valuations, that means just like critics, right? That reviews literature.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, like a critique.
Mhm.
Certain critiques of literature are more valuable than others.
Yeah.
So there could be a critique that bases it on, mm, you know, the intention of the author, right? Um, you see that in one. So like
Mm.
just where it says assumption, I would go to where it talks about assumptions.
Right.
So like maybe like where you highlighted 1 and 2, I would highlight the assumptions before where it says 1.
Right.
Yeah, because that's where I would look. I would read the question. Implicit in the passage is the assumption that, and I'd go to where it says assumptions. And so it says assumptions. One, relevant part of the author's intention is what the author actually put into the work. Intention as realized is the one that counts. So that means that if it's not the intention as realized, it doesn't count. So the one that matters is that. The other ones don't matter.
Oh,
So one way is better than others.
okay. Oh, wow, that's yeah, this one's tough.
It's like you would still be able to answer it because B, C, and D won't be it.
Mhm.
Um, but you know, this is what I mean. Like, I don't like to just say A is the answer because
Yeah,
B, C, and D are not the answer. Um, I like to actually go into why A is the answer,
right,
and that is by so like reading this, it says assumption. I would go to where it says assumptions.
right.
Yeah, and like yeah,
Okay,
overall, when you read this, you know, the vibe you should be getting is that a formalist literary critic is super strict, like clearly thinks this is the way to do it and other ways are inferior.
right,
So that's like the vibe kind of.
right.
Any questions there?
Did I send you any other questions from this passage or no?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I kind of do have to go.
Oh, okay. There's one more that you sent. Wait.
Is it from the same passage?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's one more from this passage. And then you sent me one from a different one.
Yeah,
So yeah, we can like do that one, the last one from this passage, and then yeah, then we can I can let you go.
sounds good.
Has this been like helpful so far?
Yeah, it's good to talk out loud what the passage is saying because I try to do that at home. I did
Yeah.
it for a day and I just stopped because it takes effort to like talk to yourself.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So, okay, the last one says, for which of the following conclusions does the passage offer the most support? So, this is where you basically, this is like the grunt work kind of questions, where you kind of like just look at the choices, try to find them, and then see if there's any like evidence used to support it.
Hmm.
Or which one is given the most support. So so I call it the grunt work because it means that we're gonna have to do some work here.
Hmm.
So yeah, so how would you go about this?
I would just go by answer choices. Is that
Um, okay, so all right, so yeah, go.
so merely potential until it is read? It's kind of at the beginning, I think, of the passage.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, paragraph. It doesn't really say much about it afterwards. It just says that.
Mm-hmm.
So eliminate.
Okay.
A literary work can be analyzed in terms of. Yeah, I chose this one because it talks about the forces that produce it. It gave like all these examples.
Mm-hmm.
So like it says, oh, motive for money or like et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, oh, this sounds like it has support. So I chose it.
Mm-hmm. So
But
remember when we came across part of the passage where I said we don't have to read the rest of it because it's just going in depth into the same thing.
right.
So that kind of is a clue as to, because when I saw it, I kind of like knew that that's something that we're going to come back to.
Oh, okay.
So, and that's the third, or one, two, three, four, five. That's the fifth paragraph,
Mhm.
you know, where it says there's no ideal reader, right? And then it keeps going and it keeps saying, you know, to propose finding. So the part that you said is like either, you know, everyone's reading is or you know, the things that you said, the two examples or whatever, like that's some support right there. And then after that, it keeps going. It says like we're gonna have to split it into a group of ideal readers, and you know, if we did this thing, this proves the author's sincerity or whatever. Um, but if we do that, we discount some other thing. So that's just the most like kind of support or elaboration. That's not a word. Um, but it gives you it's the most like elaborate kind of explanation or uh yeah, it's the most like support that's given to something.
Right. So I didn't choose this one because frankly, I just thought that it says the question says which of the following conclusions. So then it says literary critics must assume an ideal reader. So then I thought the passage would have to say something about why that conclusion is true or like support it. But I just don't really feel like it's supported.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, because it says, oh, I see what you're saying. The literary critic must assume an ideal reader, and then it says there is no ideal reader, of course, right? No, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So okay. So they're saying, so okay, if the conclusion is saying that there is, okay, so first of all, they're saying an assumption is that there is an ideal reader, and then the conclusion is there is no ideal reader.
Mhm.
Everything after saying that it's a defensible strategy, right? Like this is how we would go about finding an ideal reader. Like it's still something that is um, supported. Like that entire long paragraph that I like
Yeah.
kind of like glanced over because you understood it from the get go is just a lot of basically support for something.
Oh, so is
So,
it so
but
it's
I can, yeah.
support for it being a defensible strategy, which is the
Um, yeah. Because yeah, because they're saying, yeah, they're saying that we're assuming that there is an ideal reader. Of course, there is no ideal reader, but for the purpose of focusing on the poem and doing all this stuff that we're doing with uh, formalist literary criticism, um, we're going to actually see or see if we can defend this strategy of the possibility of there being an ideal reader.
right.
So like even though that particular statement says there is no ideal reader, of course, it spends that entire paragraph saying like in support of the whether or not there could be an ideal reader.
Yeah.
So I see exactly what you're saying, like why you're saying that. Um, but it's not, yeah, it's not going, they're never going to ask you like what's right or what's wrong. They're always going to ask you like from the author's perspective. So like the author's perspective, what is the author like it doesn't matter if there's an ideal reader or not, like from the what is the author trying to um you know trying to or what is the author trying the hardest to support
Oh,
using. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So yeah. Okay. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah.
And I know you're out of time, so you could send me more of these things. I'll make like that notebook, the OneNote notebook. I'll share it with you. And you said you also had some questions with like physics and cell bio and genetics and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you can send me questions on that stuff as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, no, physics is mostly like for me, physics is like in terms of content really weak for me. And
Huh?
I just on test day, I just pray that I don't get physics questions, and that's how I get through the chem phys section.
Like,
um
yeah,
so, so yeah, it's I mean, I can definitely send you more detail on like which ones that I'm talking about.
yeah. I think it's useful to know that, like, kind of like, well, all right, we'll go from what you sent me.
Yeah, and like I mean, last thing I'll say is like for physics is for me it's mostly my strategy is really bad, but it kind of works, which is why I got an okay score on it.
Yeah, yeah.
I my strategy for physics is to memorize everything, like all the formulas.
Okay, I want to say
Plus,
right away that physics is like, so like biology is applied chemistry, chemistry is applied physics. So if your conceptual understanding of physics is sound, everything else comes naturally.
it's not sound.
So like, so the memorization, because you probably read a bunch of posts from me saying you don't need to memorize that.
Yes,
And it's true. And there's like a video of me with one of my students talking about amino acids,
yeah,
and she was saying, like, I have to memorize them all. And so we just went through every single, like, in the question bank or second one of the things, every single one that asked about amino acids,
yeah,
and basically we were able to answer them all. I mean, like, all you need to know are, you know if you know the why, like, everything else can be deduced. So if you just memorize all the amino acids, it's like the same thing with like memorizing vowels versus consonants.
yeah. I
Like,
mean,
the
but
way that I memorize the amino acids is I know the ones that are basic, I know the ones that are acidic. So if they're not the basic ones or acidic ones, they're all the other ones.
amino
So,
acids not is the yeah.
oh no,
Yes.
I'm just using that as an example. So, like, so if you know, like, but yeah, once you, yeah, send me stuff
Okay.
for physics and stuff, and and then, yeah, you said like genetics and cell bio.
Yeah, because I didn't take those in college, so I was
Yeah, me neither.
very yeah. I mean, it's just anyway. And like I just have one last question that I was gonna
Sure.
ask. Um, so for cars, I think when I was doing my practice questions for the AMC, like the actual full length ones, after the car section, I felt like I understood every passage, but then on my actual exam, I felt like I didn't understand any passages. So then I also feel like the actual one might be harder than the AMC ones, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
Well. So I mean, like, everyone takes the AAMC ones,
Yeah.
so they're going to design, the actual test to be to at least look as different from the
Okay.
AAMC ones as possible.
Right.
So that is just, you know, on an actual test, it's, for the first time ever. So you're going to feel a little bit more, stress and, fear and things like that.
Yeah.
But I would, like, you know, speculate, or even more than speculate. I would say that if there is an AAMC test that you have not taken, and I switch a passage out with one from like a new test that you would take like on test day, that it wouldn't be different. It's just that once you're taking the test, like, the pressure's on, and it's like it's a long test and you have to maintain, your attention span for like what, like 8 hours. Um, and especially if you're like concerned most with cars, like, it's going to be a little bit, it's going to be easier to kind of like freak out.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned something about timing and stuff, and we can go over that as well. The way that I deal with timing with students is, like, at first we don't think about time, because at first it's building up the ability to be able to answer the question right.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, we can step up the timing aspect of it. Because
Mm-hmm.
by that point, you at least know that you're capable of answering the right question and it's not just a matter of chance.
Right.
So yeah, we can do it like so we can do it like that.
Okay.
If that makes sense. But yeah, you're saying like, on the actual test, like you're saying you come away from it like feeling like that you didn't understand, like.
Yeah, I didn't understand what the passage was saying. And also there's a few questions that were like totally like requires like multiple levels of logic that I was like, there's
Mhm.
no way I can figure this out like right now.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah. Yeah, different passages have, different levels of difficulty based on what each individual is comfortable with. So I also favor the approach of like, skipping around, which takes practice. It's not for everyone, but since since you have a finite period of time, and since not every passage is equal in terms of difficulty, and since not every question is equal in terms of difficulty, it doesn't make sense to give every single question or passage the same amount of time.
right.
So you don't want to, spend too much time on passage like whatever 4 because it's hard, and run out of time for passages that come on later that might be easier.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so yeah, so send me as much as possible, and I'll put it in a OneNote and I'll share that with you, and yeah, we can go from there.
And should I, so in terms of payment, should I pay you in through, because I mean, PayPal's the only way I can think of right now.
Yeah,
That
yeah, you can do PayPal. I will send you the details for
Yeah,
that.
right. Just send me like how you want me to like send
Yeah,
who.
yeah,
Okay.
sure. Okay. Now, yeah. So yeah, and then send me, as many questions or passages as possible.
Okay.
And you said 2 to 3 times a week. We could
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. I've never. Yeah, I haven't had a tutor
Uh,
for the last exam that I studied for because I just didn't have time to have a tutor. But now that I'm retaking it, I kind of already have the content somewhat down. So then
mhm.
I need some extra help. So yeah.
Yeah, of course. That's what I'm here for. All right.
Great.
So yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll email you with. I mean, I'm very available, so I'll just email you with when I think we should meet again. Probably like in a few days, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. I just want you to, send me as much like material so I get as much of an idea as possible as to what to focus on when we
Okay.
do meet.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah,
Sounds
just
good.
send me as much of that as possible. Like, are you using anything else besides AAMC?
No. Well, I have UU World.
Okay. So yeah, we could use that, and yeah, just send me as much like
Okay.
that as possible. Okay.
Okay. I'll sort it through.
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. Okay. Take care.